Welcome back to the Oxford Internet Policy and Politics Conference. My name is Hunter Hinson. I'm a student at the Oxford Internet Institute. For this session on From Automobile Capitalism to Platform Capitalism, Revisiting Toyotism, we have Mark Steinberg from Concordia University speaking, and we're super grateful to have him here remotely. Thank you again for coming, and you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. So I have a 20-minute talk or so, but since it's about a paper that I've written, I'll just sort of give a brief overview. I have some slides if it's helpful, and I'll just set those up right now. So yeah, thank you for inviting me, and thank you especially to Daniel Gutierrez Sandoval for organizing this. What I'd like to talk about today is the relationship between platform capitalism, a term that was recently coined or brought into wider use by Nick Cernicek around 2015, 2016, and automobile manufacture, obviously an industry with a long legacy in the 20th century, something that formed the basis of what we now know as Fordism and post-Fordism as well. So when I say the relationship between, let's say, platforms and automobile industry, maybe what comes to mind is EV makers and the way that smartphone battery makers are now getting into electric vehicle production. But what I really wanted to do was think about the longer history of the relationship between the car and the platform. And this comes out of a longer research project of mine. And I just put the book, The Platform Economy, How Japan Transformed the Consumer Internet. In researching this, which took over the last decade or so, I've been interested in the where and the when of the platform economy, or platforms first, and then the platform economy and platform capitalism subsequently. And I focused mostly on the 1990s and 2000s in Japan, and look at the early beginnings of the internet and internet business. There I'm looking at the mobile internet mostly, and the sort of what we could consider as precursors to the Android and iPhone operating systems that were extremely popular in Japan. iMode is one of the most recognizable of these, but there are others as well. And researching this book, I discovered that one of the origins of the term platform is in automobile production and theory. This is something I just mentioned in passing in my book, but really get into in this article, From Automobile Capitalism to Platform Capitalism, Toyotism as a Prehistory of Digital Platforms, published in Organization Studies in 2022. And that's going to be the basis of what I talk about today. So if you'd like to read more on this, please do. And I also just welcome any questions or comments, even critiques of this that you have. Extending this kind of longer history in research around convenience stores and retail outlets is also part of the platform economy. But I'll put that aside for now. So Nick Cernicek, in Platform Capitalism, his famous kind of short book on the term, mentions in passing the relationship between Toyotism, which is the kind of Toyota model of automobile production that influenced many other industries thereafter, and platforms. But I'd like to go into this genealogy in more depth today. And to do so, I draw on some of my research that really shows that the car is kind of the star of the platform economy. And this research is sort of two-pronged. First is research into the discourse around the platform, term platform in English and Japanese. So when I was looking at early writings on the platform, what kept coming up was the automobile. And second, then, building on this first insight, was looking at the automobile industry itself and trying to get a better understanding of the development of the automobile industry, and finding that many of the things familiar with what we now term platforms were also being developed in some ways in the automobile industry. So I also want to just mention in kind of parentheses that the automobile capitalism article was published in a organization studies journal that was a special issue that was dedicated to thinking the relationship between new technologies and organizational forms. And so as a media studies scholar by training and by work, I'm sympathetic to the idea that new technologies create new organizational structures. That is the sort of Marshall McLuhan idea that the medium is the message, technologies impact social form. But I'm also very much trained in the lineage of the cultural studies, and especially the Raymond Williams critique of Marshall McLuhan, where he says that social forms also organize technology. So there's a kind of twofold pushback between technologies and social forms, and both inform the other. So in this work, I examine first the definitions of the platform and show, again, these kind of automobile industry sources, that the auto industry uses something like platform as an organizational technique. And second, look at management theory as a site of development for a theorization of the platform that then informs people like Nick Cernicek in writing the Platform Capitalism book. So we have an earlier model of this type of work in Boltanski and Chiapello in The New Spirit of Capitalism, where they argue that management literature, and I'm quoting them here, is a medium offering the most direct access to representations associated with the spirit of capitalism in any given era. It is also one of the main sites in which the spirit of capitalism is inscribed. So that was a quotation from them, but the idea is that there's a kind of co-production between management theory and the economy or organizational practice. So one of the precursors to the term platform, which is somewhat of a keyword today, as well as an important analytical term, was of course the term network, popularized in the 1990s and 2000s. Something that touches on all areas of media studies, organization studies, and economic life. But as I said, I found something peculiar when I was looking up the English and eventually Japanese terms of platform in the 1960s onwards, that the term platform appeared more frequently in relationship to automobiles, especially in the 1970s and 80s, than computers. So we associate the term platforms with computers or alternatively economic theory, but it really had its origins in automobile production, and especially a kind of stack model of the platform. So here I'll go into sort of two separate models of the platform, or two ideas that are implicit in the platform model. And the first is the stack. And the stack refers to a layered model of the platform, often associated with computing. That is, there's a sort of hardware, there's an operating system, there's software that runs on top of it, that people like Bratton or Gillespie have argued that this sort of translates from an architectural understanding of platform as something on which something else is based. The usage is present in media studies as well as organization studies, and refers to hardware like the IBM 360, the Intel chip as a platform in the 1990s, social media sites in the 2000s or 2010s like YouTube, TikTok, or Twitter, were when posts on a platform. So again, in computing, one layer is built on top of another, and in social media, one posts something on a place like Twitter or X, as it's now termed. But the idea of platform as base also started with a sort of automobile thinking, as we see in a sort of strange sketch in the slide here. And here I'm going to quote Michael Cusimano, a management theorist at MIT and a crucial figure in this automobile lineage of platform capitalism. And he writes that I quote him here, the term platform first came into wide usage in the field of management as a word meaning foundation of components around which an organization creates a related but different set of products or services. Toyota's Corolla sedan, Celica sports car, Matrix hatchback, or RAV4 sports utility vehicle are different products built on in separate projects, but they share the same underbody as well as essential components such as the engine. So again, in automobile production, there's something of a base or under body on top of which models are placed. And we can see this in this example from the Volkswagen platform in 2020, where it may be hard to see, but many of these cars, which are sometimes based on different sub-brands, are all based on the same platform. And each of the sort of different areas, MQB 2016, for instance, all of these cars in that are based on the same platform. So from the Volkswagen Golf to the Jetta sedan to Audi A3 or Q3 SUV are all based on the same kind of underbody. And so this allows a combination of a kind of standardization with variation in the production of an automobile. So this was first used in the automobile sector, the term platform, in the 1970s. And prior to this, we used terms like base level standard or chassis, model, base shell, body shell, before arriving at the term platform in the late 70s and early into the 1980s. And this then moves into computational thinking, is my argument. Now, a second aspect of the platform, this sort of stack is one model. The second aspect is what we could call the intermediary. And we know this via economic theory, especially via multi-sided markets, with the idea that there's a kind of horizontal model of the platform as a mediatory device enabling transactions between third parties to take place. The credit card is one of these models that Rocher G. Roll especially developed in the late 1990s, publishing in the early 2000s. Airbnb and Uber are extensions of this model, operated as intermediaries between room hosts and renters, or drivers and riders, creating multi-sided markets, or what's been known as labor intermediaries, platform labor intermediaries, termed by people like Niels van Doorn. Most economics literature on platforms stresses this multi-sided market aspect of it, but I think it's worth considering both the stack and intermediary at the same time. And I think this horizontal model of intermediary is also present in the development of something like Toyotism. Now, sort of going into Toyotism for a second, what we find in Toyota's production model starting in the 1950s and onwards is that Toyota uses multiple tiers of suppliers with only assembling about 30% of the final product in the main plant. It also abandons a kind of Fordist model of what's called just-in-case production, so producing automobiles just in case someone will buy them. And Toyota adopts what's called a just-in-time production model, which is starting the production of a car upon the order of a car from a consumer, with data gathered at different points in the production line. And so parts are delivered on an as-needed basis. So the intermediary relies on, as I showed here, kind of data gathering and mobilization. The modeling of firm as intermediaries. This is the sort of platform intermediary model. But here I show in this graph a kind of parallel between Toyota's automobile production and platform capitalism, mobilizing both the sort of stack and intermediary model. And what I see as Toyota's sort of prehistory of the platform concept is the way it really draws on the use of intermediary model, with Toyota as being the sort of middle or platform between suppliers and then the end consumers, and organizing all of this within its just-in-time system. So, without trying to make the case too much, I want to really consider an earlier history of platform capitalism as going back to the automobile, so what we could think of as automobile platform capitalism. So this is sort of the industrial backdrop of automobile capitalism, but I want to now move on to the sort of management theory aspect of it. And another aspect of this story, and here I move to another graph as part of this paper, is a parallel between development of platform theory in the US and platform theory in Japan. And again, my idea behind doing this is that platform theory also shapes the way we make discussions about platforms today. So some of what we call platforms are developed directly out of platform theory. And to me, one of the most interesting aspects of platform theory is that it's developed by people like Michael Cusimano, Annabelle Goyer, for those of you who have read their book Platform Leadership from 2002. This is one of the early deployments of platform theory. And it really, when you trace Michael Cusimano's work, he comes out of analysis of Toyotism and the Japanese automobile industry more generally. So in the 1980s, his first book, based on his dissertation research, is on Nissan and Toyota and the development of the automobile sector in Japan. And this is not a coincidence. From here, he moves to the internet, but brings some of the vocabulary of the automobile industry, especially the platform, into the software sector. On the other side of the Pacific, there is Kokuyo Jiro, a person who's essential to the development of Japanese platform theory, who starts with a real concern, and this is in a publication from 1994, special issue of a journal called Infocom Review, the launch of a journal on the platform business, so arguably the first use of the platform business as a term, as a keyword globally in 1994. And his concerns are really about the transformations of economic organization and industrial organization due to the development of communicational theories, and especially the internet at this time in the 1990s. So he's working early 1990s before the popularization of the internet, but there's already a kind of industrial usage of network technologies to communicate between buyers and sellers in something like Toyota's automobile manufacture. One of Kokuryo's examples is the automobile parts supplier Misumi, a case study of his, as well as Ocknet used car auctions. So again, what we see early on is both an attention to the potential internet economy as it's developing in Japan, and also a look to how it's going to impact a major aspect of the Japanese economy, like the automobile industry. So in this sense, both in the US and in Japan, what we see is a kind of background of the automobile industry as driving developments in the terminology of the platform, as well as conceptual modeling of what becomes a platform economy. And so I want to draw to a close here this talk, partly by just adding that this is one example of the expansion of the platform capitalism concept, which I think needs to be pluralized to platform capitalisms as we find it develop in different contexts around the world. And also, maybe just to say that it aligns with other work, just to name two, on India and China, for example, by Lin Zhang or Adrian Athik, who likewise argue that platform capitalism for Zhang emerges from what she terms petty capitalism in China, or in Adrian Athik's analysis via the Emporium model in India. And there's many more examples like this that we can build on, but that we need to also think about sort of the ways that localities or specific locations build into what's now kind of seen as a global model of platform capitalism. So I'll end here. I thank you for your attention, and I welcome any questions for the time we have left.
Thank you, Professor Steinberg. Do we have any questions in the room or in the chat? Currently don't see any. You just explained it so well, so no one has any questions. Well, thank you so much for your time, Professor Steinberg. We really appreciate it. And another round of applause, please, from the room.
Okay, thank you for your attention and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you as well.